Okay, today's video, we're going to go over a few different concepts here for the skeletal system. We're going to start off with how bones are constantly, essentially recycling matrix. There's a constant breakdown and then building back up of the bone matrix. So this is a homeostatic process that needs to be in balance. And otherwise, bone tissue will either have there'll be too much of it, too much calcium, or not enough. So there has to be a balance here. So it's really highly regulated by hormones. So your endocrine system helps to control these processes. And there are two processes that are going on at the same time. Okay, so there's resorption, which is where the osteoclasts, so our cells that break down bone matrix, are going to come in and break down that bone matrix and do what is known as resorbing, or taking back the calcium and the other minerals and organic molecules that was in the bone matrix to start with. And then deposition is just replacing that bone matrix, so just making new bone matrix. And this is really important for helping to control calcium levels in the blood. So resorption and deposition are both working at the same time. Sometimes there will be more deposition, sometimes there will be more resorption based upon needs and also based upon the hormones that are circulating through your body. Okay, just an interesting little tidbit is that about 3 to 5% of your bone calcium is actually exchanged every year. And that is kind of crazy to think about, that 3 to 5% of your bone calcium is broken down and then replaced. So there are a few different vitamins that affect your bone's health. And one of the most important here is vitamin D. And you can see over here some common foods where you can acquire vitamin D. So certainly a lot of dairy products that obviously contain milk, mushrooms, salmon, eggs, vegetables like green beans and peas. Those are all good sources of vitamin D. And the reason why vitamin D is so important is because it plays a role in the absorption of calcium within your small intestine. Okay, so small intestine is where you're absorbing stuff from food. And if you don't have a whole lot of vitamin D, then you're not going to be absorbing a whole lot of calcium. So without vitamin D, you won't be getting enough calcium. Your bone matrix will lack a proper amount of calcium and will be softer as a result. Okay, some other important vitamins are vitamin A. Again, some sources of these vitamins over here. So vitamin A helps to control your osteoblast and osteoclast activities. Vitamin C is important for helping to synthesize collagen, which is the other big part of your bone matrix. And then vitamin K helps to attract the calcium to the bones, where the bones will then put it into the bone matrix. Other things that help to affect your bones and bone growth are hormones. Growth hormone helps to stimulate the division of cartilage cells within your epiphyseal plates. So the more division, the more mitosis that's occurring within those cells at the epiphyseal plates, the thicker those plates are becoming and the longer your bones will become. So without a whole lot of growth hormone, you would have what is called pituitary dwarfism. So the long bones would be much shorter than a typical human. And if you have growth hormone in excess, you would have what is known as pituitary gigantism, where your long bones are much longer than a typical human. If you start getting an excess of growth hormone as an adult, you would have what is known as acromegaly, which is where your hands, feet, and jaw would become abnormally large. So if any of you know Andre the Giant, he had what was known as acromegaly. Calcitonin is another hormone that helps to prevent the breakdown of bone and conserve the calcium in bones. So this keeps the calcium in bones, prevents the calcium from being released into your bloodstream. And not only that, but it also helps to put calcium back into bones. Parathyroid hormone is going to do the opposite, and it is actually going to increase the activity of osteoclasts to break down the bone matrix to then release calcium into the bloodstream. All right, so now let's get into some of the functions of bones and some general functions. These are the ones that you probably typically think about. Providing structure, so giving shape to the different parts of your body, such as your head and your face. Providing support, so helping to support the weight of your body, your vertebral column, your hips, your legs. Okay, all of those help to support the weight of your body, so that you can like sit up or stand up and walk and so on. Bones also provide protection. So for example, within your skull, bones help to protect your eyes, your inner ears, and your brain. And then your thoracic cage also helps to protect some of the more delicate organs in your chest, such as your heart and your lungs. And perhaps the one that you most commonly think about is movement. And bones provide an anchor point for muscles to pull on and then manipulate and move. So providing your body with overall movement is another important function of bones. So our next function, and this is more of a specialized function, is known as hematopoiesis. And this is just the formation of blood cells. This is going to occur within your bone marrow. That is either within your medullary cavity when you're younger of long bones, or within the spaces between the trabeculae of your spongy bone. So at your age, and especially at my age, most of your red bone marrow, which is where the blood cell formation would happen, is going to be within your flat bones, in your skull, or in your ribs, and so on. Bone marrow is a specialized connective tissue, and it is responsible not just for the formation of red blood cells, which are known as erythrocytes, but also for the formation of white blood cells, or leukocytes, and blood platelets, which are known as thrombocytes. So the reason why red marrow is known as red marrow is because it is colored red. And the reason why it's colored red is because of the presence of these erythrocytes. So this chart shows us how, from a single stem cell that has the potential to become any one of your blood cells, we can see how it can divide. It can become one of these common myeloid progenitors, which then has the ability to become a red blood cell or a thrombocyte, or perhaps one of these white blood cells. Or it could become a common lymphoid progenitor, which would become one of these white blood cells, right? So these are the red blood cells. These are the platelets. Every other cell here, mast cells, basophils, neutrophils, eosinophils, monocytes, macrophages, natural killer cells, T lymphocytes, B lymphocytes, all of these are white blood cells. And I know most of them are purple, but that's just what they look like underneath the microscope. So perhaps some important, little tidbits of information. Red blood cells, they help to carry oxygen throughout your body. Your platelets help to clot your blood. So they play an important role, like whenever you get an injury, especially like in a blood vessel, to help to stop the escape of blood through the broken blood vessel. And then the rest of the white blood cells, they play a role in your immunity. And not only that, but also in fighting off infections. Okay, so finally, we're going to get to what is known as inorganic salt storage. So you store calcium salts within your bone matrix. So calcium is important not just for providing the hardness of the bones, but calcium also plays other roles within your body, such as contributing to muscle contraction. So it's important that you have a good supply of calcium, and you also need to have a certain amount of calcium within your blood to maintain homeostasis. So storing calcium within your bones helps to not only take the calcium out of the blood, but it's essentially going to be a reserve supply for whenever perhaps your calcium levels in your blood get to be too low. So bones provide a storage area for calcium, and the main salt that you have within your bone matrix is known as calcium phosphate, which contains phosphorus. So your bones are also an important storage area for phosphorus, which is going to be used in your nucleotides and in ATP. As I said before, when we were talking about homeostasis, inorganic salt storage is highly regulated, and it's regulated by these two hormones, calcitonin and parathyroid hormone. So there's going to be a balance between the building and breaking down of matrix so that our calcium blood levels remain within this range of 9 to 11 milligrams per 100 milliliters of blood. So if your levels of calcium in your blood go down, then your parathyroid gland, which are these little dots here, they're going to release parathyroid hormone, which is nice and easy to remember. And those are going to stimulate the action of the osteoclasts to break down bone matrix, to put calcium back into the blood, to increase the levels once more. Now, if you have too much calcium in your blood, maybe because you just ate a bunch of cheese or drank some milk, so you've got more calcium than you really need in your blood, well, your thyroid gland, which is this whole structure here, is going to release a hormone known as calcitonin. And the calcitonin will help to stimulate the osteoblasts and have them incorporate a lot of that calcium within the calcium salts, so the calcium phosphate, to then get deposited within your bone. So that will help to take the calcium out of the bloodstream and put it into the bone matrix so that our calcium level in the blood goes back down to where it should be. So that is the end of today's presentation. So hopefully this was helpful for you in learning about the homeostasis and the factors affecting homeostasis in bones, as well as these important functions of the skeletal system. So tomorrow we're going to work on the different types of fractures and how fractures heal. And at that point, we're going to be done with our content for chapter 7.